Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming on this terrible night, but it's a very important reason why we're all together. My name is Paul Gannon. I'm a member of the Selectmen in Hingham, and I'm also part of a committee that's been meeting for the last several months to try to put this informational forum together. First of all, I just want to thank, we have a number of sponsors, including the students from SAD who are out assisting us in the front lobby area, but I want to thank, and I know we have representatives from the Hingham Police Department. Mike Perino's here. We have the Fire Department with Bob Olson. I know Steve Murphy's going to talk for answer questions for the fire. Mike Ramsey will be here for the Police Department, but also Ted Alexiadis, Betty Foley, who work with me on a daily basis in the Selectman's office. I want to thank them for helping put all this together in terms of the committee. Dot Gallo, who's done a ton of work, as always, on this committee. Andy Pavin, who has assisted us with some of our promotional information. Again, I mentioned Bob and Kathy Crowley from the Public Health, who's also here, who was very helpful to us in putting together some of the information for you. We have a panel of speakers that are going to speak tonight. I will say there's been one change to the itinerary. Lydia Altimo is going to speak on behalf of Cheryl Bartlett from the Department of Public Health. She was called away on a Ebola conference, which is obviously something that's been important on a national and international front. So the speakers are going to be Lydia Altimo, Mike Perino from Hingham Police, Timothy Cruz, who's our DA in Plymouth County, and thank you for coming. Janet Lemke is going to do a slide presentation affiliated with the South Shore Hospital, and Jack and Becca Riley are going to affiliate with Learn to Cope, and they are giving a personal presentation as well. I want to thank also all the folks who are in the hallway, in the lobby, that have information, because there's three things that this program is really all about, as far as I'm concerned, is educating everybody about the epidemic, the problem, so that we can protect our families, protect our property, and protect our neighborhood. Also, one of the important reasons why we're here and why we're having this forum is to get information out for services for people in need, because there are 101 reasons why people have problems with addiction, and it could be anything from a mistake made by a child to a treatment protocol for somebody who is injured, and every person that has an addiction needs to have an outlet, and I know that we have people to speak on that as well. And the third reason that we're here tonight is to look forward. Chris Murphy from the Safe Harbor Cohasset Coalition, we've talked on the phone, nice to see you. She's here. We want to make ourselves an equal partner in the coalition on the South Shore and beyond, to work together to try to stamp out this addiction and this epidemic, and obviously strengthen numbers. So the more people that work together, the better off we're going to be. So I want to thank you. Just real briefly before I call our first person, I want to introduce my two colleagues in the Board of Selectmen, Irma Lauder, who's our chair, and Paul Healy, who are here. I want to thank them for coming. Ray Estes, who's the chair of the school committee, friend of mine, thank you. Matt McDonough, who is a candidate for the Plymouth Registry of Probate, is here. And I saw Ed Schreier, a colleague of mine in the school committee, and I apologize if I'm missing anybody. But thank you all for coming. So our first speaker is Lydia Altimo. She's the director of the Bureau of Substance Abuse for the Department of Mental Health. And I would ask her to come up here and share her thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And Lita Bradley, thank you again for the opportunity, and thanks to the community for, on behalf of DPH, for the opportunity to share some updates with you related to the work that we're doing at the department. I think that everybody knows that as of March 27 of this year, Governor Patrick declared a public health emergency, and that declaration was due to a variety of reasons. one of which was that we were seeing various increases in terms of instances of opioid overdose as well as unintentional deaths. One of the pieces that I would share with you is that we, in terms of the data, we saw a 90% increase in terms of unintentional overdose deaths in the state. And with regards to the Hingham community, when we looked at our treatment system in terms of number of individuals that were accessing treatment, we saw that there was about 50% of the population were identifying opiates as the drug of their primary drug of choice. Really, with the numbers that the governors were looking at in terms of an increase in terms of the opioid deaths, not only just within the respective communities, but all across the state, the declaration was really a way to look at ways to address this issue from an emergency basis as well as on a long-term basis. And so with that, the governor tasked the department to take immediate action to really look at a way to contain the problem and to really provide resources and access to communities to address the problem. So with that, the Commissioner of Public Health was granted emergency powers to take action through a variety of steps, one of which includes providing emergency regulation so that first responders could be able to carry naloxone, so that also family members and bystanders would have access to carry naloxone. And with this, really giving the communities and family members the opportunity to save lives that we were seeing that were being lost in a very precipitous state around the time. In addition, the commissioner also was granted the power to really mandate the use of the prescription monitoring program among physicians and pharmacies. Part of this was really to allow for physicians and pharmacies to be able to address diversion and misuse among prescriptions. This was one of the key issues that was identified as being a leading cause of this issue, and that that prescription drug overdose and abuse was really part of the issue. And so having the ability to mandate the use of the prescription monitoring program was one of the immediate action that was taken by the department. In addition, the department also called for a task force to be put together under the auspices of the Interagency Council on Substance Abuse and Prevention. And the role of the task force was to really go across the state and to meet with individuals from across various communities to really look at the problem at the community level and to present recommendation on how to address this issue. And so, and address it not only in terms of the immediate approach, but also on a long-term basis as well. So with those recommendations, the department is really taking a four-pronged approach to address the issue in terms of prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery support. With regards to prevention, our prevention, the department has a prevention unit within the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services that is really working closely with communities, particularly providing assistance and support to community coalitions to build and to strengthen resources and capacity within the community, to raise awareness of the issue and to provide support so that individuals in community can know where to go and can know how to access resources to address that. Relative to intervention, also mandating the use of the PMP as well as providing much needed support with regards to having naloxone available for communities to be able to use and to save a life and really allow individuals the opportunity to have access to treatment. The Bureau of Substance Abuse Services has a pretty robust substance abuse treatment system. And one of the recommendations that we received through the task force was that although the services span across a full continuum, ranging from acute services to recovery support, that individuals in community were having a really hard time in terms of identifying ways to identify the resources and know how to access the services that are available. And so part of the recommendation was to really to provide support so that people can better understand the services and then also be able to navigate the system. And so we are working actively with communities to expand the system, to expand the services that are available, but also to give people the opportunity to to have access to information and to know the system and to be able to access services when needed. Along with treatment, it was also identified that there is a need for recovery support services. The key to this is that with treatment, upon completion of treatment, there is also a need for individuals to maintain their recovery. Once they go back to community, the issue is really being able to have support so that they can maintain their sobriety and remain in recovery. And so we've been working actively to strengthen our recovery support system, to provide peer support in community, to provide recovery support centers so that individuals who are completing their treatment can have a place to belong, a sober environment among other peers who are also in recovery so that they can maintain their recovery. We're also supporting initiatives such as Learn to Cope to be able to work with families, work with community members to strengthen their capacity to support around maintaining individuals' recovery. And so with this work, the goal is to be able to continue to partner with community members, partner with community leaders so that we not only learn what's happening at the community level, but we're also able to make policy decisions that we can swiftly address the problem, not only on a short-term basis, but also on a long-term basis. I know that the community is really interested in having conversation around how to establish a coalition to really do work at the community level. And so within our prevention unit at BSAS, we've been working actively with various coalitions across the state to do just that, to provide the resources to assist in terms of establishing partnerships across towns and across communities. And my colleague Jose Morales, who is the director of the unit, is here with us today as well, and be more than happy to answer any questions related to that. With that, I want to say thank you again for the opportunity on behalf of the department. We're really pleased to be here to participate in this dialogue because we believe that addiction has been stigmatized for a number of years, and that that individuals are told, to remain quiet and not to talk about it. And that is why we've seen some of the issues that we're seeing, that by removing the barriers, by removing the stigma, that is how we're going to be able to address this problem. And so it's really energizing to come into various communities to see that this conversation is happening, not only behind closed doors, but really openly as a community so that we own it, so that we address it together. So we're pleased to be here on behalf of the department. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Liddy. And just if I may, I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anybody in terms of our sponsors. I know I mentioned the police and the fire department and public health, district attorney, Tim Cruz's office are all sponsors, but also the students, Hingham Students SAD, Friends of SAD, and All Town PTO are all sponsors that have worked with us and will continue to work with us to fight this this epidemic. I will say one thing, that I was at the forum in Hanover when the Commissioner of Public Health spoke, and some of the statistics, and we may be able to get more into that tonight, but the statistics are staggering in terms of the overdoses and with the opiates, and in terms of the abuse and the even the deaths. And one of the statistics that I see in my personal life as an attorney that I hear about more than anything, it says that people that are treated, average people, they could be middle-aged folks who get injuries and they take medication that's prescribed, that a lot of times it's an opiate. 23% of those people become addicted to that medication. And other people can tell you what happens from there, but it's not necessarily a good thing, because the addiction leads to other drugs and obviously more serious consequences. But I will say this, that in Hingham, one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved in this and ask folks to get involved is because I think we come at this from a position of strength. We have a very able police chief, Mike Perrino, and the district attorney's office, and together they work very hard to protect this community. And I think that it was smart to be proactive on this, to deal with it from a position of strength, because we can see by reading the papers on a weekly, if not daily basis, of the problems that are accompanying many communities in the South Shore, and not only the state of Massachusetts. So we're very lucky to have these folks here. And having said that, I'd ask Mike Perrino to come up, our police chief and a former DEER officer in Hingham, to say a few words.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gann. I want to thank you for putting this program on. Drug addiction affects all of us in this community, even if we don't have somebody in our homes that is addicted to drugs. In Hingham, we've seen one common theme when it comes to the bank robberies, breaking into houses, and even larceny from cars. All these criminals have a heroin addiction. We've noticed that our house breaks have had another common theme in it. The medicine cabinets are open. Recently, we had a house break in the Crow Point area. The neighbors got a very good description of the person that had left the house. Officers went to the area, and a foot chase ensued. When they caught up to the individual, he didn't have the jewelry or the laptop that he had stolen from the house on him. When the officers patted him down, inside his pockets, they found a prescription bottle, and the prescription bottle was for the person that lived in the home that was broken into. So this is one of the things that we see commonly, that they're going in looking for prescriptions also. One of the things that the Hingham Police Department has is a drug disposable box in our lobby. Okay. This is an opportunity for anybody who would like to get rid of prescription drugs in their homes to dump them. Just come into the police station in the lobby and just put it into the box. This was a program that was our Hingham Police Academy alumni actually sponsored it for us, and with the support of District Attorney Tim Cruz, we've actually have drug disposal boxes in every police department in Plymouth County. And again, we all thank you for that again. So, one of the things that we have seen a lot is in the last couple of years, calls for discarded needles in our parks, in our beaches. And last year, we had 16 calls for needles to be picked up. Already this year, we've had 19, and we still have a couple of months to go. And the thing about it is, possession of a hypodermic needle is not a crime anymore. So these people are still just dumping these wherever after they use their drugs. The Hingham Police Department is addressing the issue in many ways. We've continued teaching our DARE program, that's the drug education program, in all our schools, both public and private. I do believe the reason we don't see the cases of teens in our town with heroin is because of the education that we provide. The Hingham Police Department is part of the Old Colony Police Anti-Crime Task Force that includes 16 towns in Plymouth County. This allows us to team up with other police agencies to investigate all crimes. In March of this year, the towns of Hingham, Hull, Norwell, and Cohasset formed a team to address drug trafficking in our 4 towns. We found that the drug trafficking in bordering towns also was going on in Hingham. This has already led to arrests and is addressing the drug sales in all 4 communities. In closing, the drug problem plaguing the whole South Shore is being addressed by your police department, both with education and enforcement. Thank you.
So I've been told that you may not be able to hear us all that well. So I'm going to ask if any speakers that come up, they may want to just take the microphone and speak. If I can get it out. If I may, the next speaker is part of that team that we've talked about with law enforcement that has helped protect not only this community but also Plymouth County. And he does a wonderful job for us, and we're very lucky to have him. I'd ask the District Attorney Timothy Cruz to come up and speak.
Thank you, Paul. And I also want to thank the selectmen that are here tonight to put this on. Thank Chief Perino for the great job that he does here with Hingham PD. You know, I've been district attorney now here in Plymouth County for almost 13 years. And we see challenges, and the challenges that our kids are facing everywhere, whether it be internet safety, underage drinking, whether it be sexual harassment, cyberbullying, And we try to get in front of a lot of different things that occur here in our county. And when I left, I was an assistant DA back in the 80s. And when I left, and then subsequently came back 13 years ago, a gentleman came into my office, and I knew him, and I said, I knew he wasn't a lawyer. I said, what do you do here? And he told me that he was the director of preventative resources. And I said to him, that's a great title, but what do you do? And for the next hour and a half, he talked to me about the preventative programs that we're involved with in the district attorney's office here in our county, and trying to help kids and prevent things before they occur. And like I said, I think our children nowadays are facing some incredible challenges. And I look at the opiate increases in our county, and I look at what's been going on here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I don't think it is, I think some of the things that are related are things you cannot forget. In 2008, Massachusetts decriminalized less than an ounce of marijuana. Since that time period, every year but one, our fatal opiate overdoses in Plymouth County has gone up. And already this year, we have more fatal opiate overdoses in Plymouth County than we had last year. And we're not over yet. And when I talk to professionals that are out there, because I'm certainly not a doctor, but when I talk to professionals about the correlation between marijuana, and I talk to them about the correlation between the opiates, it's there, as well as prescription medication, and the overusage and the overprescription of medication by doctors. And I think a lot of that has changed. If you remember a few months back, people were talking about that real scourge. It was over in the Taunton area, and there were so many fatal opiate overdoses. And I think that a lot of things have changed since then as regarding the doctors making sure that they're not overprescribing meds. Instead of giving a kid 60 medications for pain for a surgery they had, maybe they're going to give him 10. And so you're not going to have those additional pills that were out there. And other problems that we were having here in Massachusetts were individuals who were going down to Florida, down to the pill mills, saying that their back hurt, get a Florida ID card, would walk in the door down there and say, my back hurts. They send them up for an MRI, give them a prescription. And a pill that perhaps they were getting for maybe $2, $4, back up here is going for $1 a milligram. So you have an 80 milligram tablet of OxyContin that you could purchase down in Florida for maybe $4. And you're bringing it back to Massachusetts. Florida was definitely the pill mill problem here in the United States of America. And I give them credit because they took care of a lot of that, and they shut those places down. But what that has done is created other issues here regarding the kids that are trying to get oxys, because a lot of them do start on oxys and or marijuana. And that's just the way that it is. And when you talk about the kids with a prescription, because these are usually, it doesn't matter, you know, if you're from Hingham, if you're from Norwell, if you're from Marshfield, if you're from Bridgewater, from Brockton, it doesn't matter. This has no boundaries. It is young kids, it is older people. And people, once they get hooked on this, because it changes the chemistry in your system, the serotonin in your body craves this. And that's why, like Chief Perino tells you, we have so many house breaks, so many car breaks. These kids were stealing from their parents. They're stealing from their loved ones in order to feed that craving that they've got. So these kids will go out there and do things that they normally wouldn't do. And then they end up in court. And then they're facing accountability for their actions. And that is truly important in my eyes. But we've also got to make sure that we have additional beds for kids here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which we don't have. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 123, Section 35, there's 100 beds down in Bridgewater for people that are addicted. 100 beds for the state, for men. There's virtually nothing for women other than South Bay. We need to make sure that we have more beds for these kids that need to get that help. We need to make sure that we have education, and DARE's a great program, but I think we have to get to schools even younger. And we got to talk about the scourge that is out there and the problems that are out there. You know, heroin is so deadly. When I was a young prosecutor back in the 80s again, you know, heroin was being sold on the streets, and the purity of it was approximately 18 to 20% pure. And that was because what dealers would do back then, they would put they would put inositol, they would put vitamin B, another substance into it to make more from less. So when they sold it, they could make a bigger profit. The heroin on the street now, 90% pure, 92% pure. Some kids, they can't handle this. And they're taking it, kids who have gone from prescription medications, who now can no longer afford $80 for a tablet. So now they're going to heroin because it's cheaper, it's plentiful, it's everywhere. And before you know it, because nobody in their right mind would stick a needle in their arm, they're snorting it, they're smoking it. But the rush is better when it goes directly into your blood system. So before you know it, good kids, regular kids, are taking needles and sticking them in their arms. And what we're left with that are kids who are dying as a result of this. And that we have a responsibility as a society. There's no just one agency that's going to make a difference here. It's going to have to be everybody working together. It's going to have to be the communities. It's going to have to be the police and DPH. It's going to have to be programs like Learn to Cope. We go around talking to parents and talking to kids about the issues and the problems that are out there, because they are real and they are here. And they are here to stay unless we work together. We have a drug court in Plymouth, and I often talk to the chief judge down there, and what she would like to see happen. And we actually have a new one popping up in Brockton District Court. Brockton District Court is the third busiest court in the state, and we're still trying to work out the fine details on that. But you have a lot of kids who are being weaned off of drugs on Suboxone, on methadone. You know, and really you're going from one drug to the next because kids are getting hooked from one substance to the next. The thing that I hear about that's really powerful and really works, at least to date, is Vivitrol, which is a shot you can get once a month, but it's incredibly expensive. And they don't really have those resources out there yet. But it is something to be looked at. I'm concerned in my role as the chief law enforcement official here in Plymouth County from what I see. It is important to have meetings such as this. But it's also important to see what's coming down the road. Because we've got to get in front of this, because from what I hear, in a couple of years, maybe less than a year, there's going to be a petition or a ballot question to legalize marijuana. And that's a problem. Because the marijuana kids are smoking today is not your grandparents' marijuana. It's marijuana laced with very strong levels of THC. I was out in Colorado recently. I'm on the board of the National District Attorneys Association, and I was out in Denver. That's where they had the annual meeting. So I went with a couple of my fellow DAs here from Massachusetts to one of the legalized pot shops. And I talked to the people that were working there, and I talked actually to people who weren't working there who gave me the real information. And you walk in there and you see different strains of marijuana that you can purchase, and you see candy. Candy looks like Swedish fish. Now, do you think they're putting together Swedish fish to feed a fat guy like me? They're targeting kids. That's where that candy's going. And our kids have enough problems right now. So we are in a situation where, when I talked to the DA from Denver, he told me of the problems that are going on out there. How basically, when you walk down Main Street, a lot of kids are hanging out and they're wasted, holding signs up, need money for weed. And people give it to them. He tells me about the animals that are dying out there, because not only are you selling candy, they're selling brownies, they're selling chocolate milk. And a lot of people will get wasted on their marijuana, and they give the food to the dog. The dog dies. He tells me about the armed home invasions, because people can legally grow marijuana in their homes. People out in the street find out who's selling weed, and they go there, they rob them, they steal their marijuana, they steal their money, and they kill them. They've had a number of houses blow up because individuals are trying to cook with butane burners some of the hash oil, and they don't know what they're doing. So there's a lot of challenges, and that's coming down the road also. So groups and meetings like this, informational sessions like this, are so incredibly important, not for the challenges, just for the challenges we face right now, but for what's coming down the road to us. And that's why having concerned parents that talk to their kids, that's important. It's important to be talking to people in our community and talking to the experts that are out there. I think by doing things, and I talk all around the county. I've talked to various towns all throughout Plymouth County. And I'm glad to see we have a great turnout tonight on a really terrible weather night. And that shows how important it is to make sure that we can get the information out there, make sure that we can help our children before they go down these paths, because once they do go down those paths, it's difficult to get them back. The most susceptible time for a kid to pass away from fatal opioid overdose is when they get out of rehab. We have to make sure that and most kids that go to rehab, it doesn't work the first time, second time, third time, fourth time. It'll work but it doesn't happen right away. So we need to make sure that we help the kids that we can help. And we need to make sure that we get in front of this scourge and this epidemic. We need to make sure that you help me, making sure we keep our laws intact so that we can pursue after the drug dealers who are putting this poison on the streets. Because some people want to do away with our minimum mandatory drug trafficking laws, and that's a mistake. In order to make sure the people that peddle this poison understand, if you do that, because they're not users, if you do that, you will go to jail for a long time. We need to send the word. Help who we can help, go after the individuals hurting our kids, and make sure we can look at other obstacles that are coming our way. And by doing that, we're going to be able to protect our kids. So I thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for listening to me tonight. And I'll be around if anybody wants to ask me questions. Oh, yes, ma'am. Can't hear you.
I will tell you, one of the,
You're on.
oh, I am. One of the women who was at the meeting yesterday actually had used the referral program. And I'll give you a quick update about it. It was funded by, as I understand it, both DA's offices. It does support Cohasset, it does support Hingham, and several other counties in the South Shore. And it is a terrific, terrific helpline for parents and loved ones who are in the midst of a crisis and who need help. And I would tell you, you know, hearing from someone who had to use it and the benefit of it, it was just wonderful. And I really want to tip my hat to you for funding that program.
Well, thanks. And you know, and DA Morrissey does a great job over in Norfolk. And we continue to go out and also talk to, we actually just did a training for law enforcement, and actually court personnel also, regarding the uses of Narcan. Some people, you know, Narcan is an inhalant that if an individual, if a kid uses heroin and if they overdose, the inhalant, incredibly enough, will wake them up and bring them right back to reality. And that's a great thing. But the next step is, and the problem that's out there is, some kids are getting it in their hands now and they're using it while they're shooting up. So that if two kids are doing it, okay, you go first, and if you're okay, great, and I'm going to go next, and if I'm okay, great. But if somebody overdoses, they have the Narcan, they're almost like the security blanket that they'll use to revive that individual and get them back up. So, you know, it's great that we've been able to make some positive steps, and I truly believe that we have in a short period of time, but there's so many more to do. And like I said, by working together, I think we'll be able to get there. Yeah.
Oh, there was? Okay. Because I said, should I sign up? And they said, you don't have to.
That's a good idea.
There are clipboards out front with sign-up sheets.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So, Chris, I just want to let you know that I think as we talked, we're asking people to sign up either before you came in, but obviously as you leave, if you're interested in following up and getting information or even participating on the task force that we intend to put together. So if there is sign-up sheets, there is requests for emails, and we will certainly get information out as we go. I just want to thank the DA. I'm a former prosecutor myself, and it is a tough job, and you're doing a great job at it. But I really appreciate your focus on prevention and services, because I will just tell you that what I see on the streets with heroin and opiates is it's indescribable how people's lives are affected. And you mentioned about the Suboxone and methadone. It's really not a quality of life as we all should have. So that's why it's so important to get on top of this issue, to work with families, work with the neighborhood, work with the police to make sure our kids aren't exposed to that, because it's all around us. And I want to thank you again. The next speaker we have is Janet Limke, and she has a presentation. She's medical director at the Spine Center, spine, psychiatry, and electric diagnostic medicine at Two Pond Park.
It would be physiatry.
I knew I was going to say that. Yeah. I should have quit while I was ahead. Thank you.
Does anyone know what a physiatrist is? There you go, a couple people. So yeah, we treat patients with various forms of disability primarily. I've been focusing on spine and musculoskeletal disorders as for most of my career. I'm not a psychiatrist, okay. But so I head up the spine center there, and I am part of that Center for Orthopedic Spine and Sports. I am also on the Norfolk County Safe Prescribing Clinical Work Group with District Attorney Michael Morrissey, and Dave Morgan is thankfully here. Thank you for coming. He heads that up. He heads that working group up. And Lynn Frano came also from Weymouth. She heads up the Youth Coalition in Weymouth. So it's great to see familiar places from neighboring towns who have a jump start on some of these issues. So feel free to pick their brains after. I'm hoping they'll add into the discussion part of our meeting tonight. How many of you work in with this problem day after day? A lot of people are doing some good hard work. Thank you, and thanks for coming tonight. I'm sure you all have things to share. This perspective is going to be mostly from looking at the how we got into this mess to some degree. You'll see the connection in a little bit. Oops, here we go. Okay, here we are. So poisoning is now the leading cause of death from injuries in the U.S., and this has happened at around 2008. It crossed the link here with motor vehicle crashes. Were decreasing over time because of safer motor vehicles and better airbags, and here's the drug poisoning deaths following along this curve. It's just, I never thought I'd see the day. And the majority of the cause of this is the opioid analgesic. So that's the green line here, going all the way up. You see it nearly quadrupled over a decade. So we have just seen incredible amounts of opioid addiction now and deaths from that. The interesting thing, and this has been a real source of concern that made us rethink this, it's not just people becoming addicted who want to be high. The age group of the majority of deaths, 45 to 54. Does that surprise anyone? So yeah, it's your middle-aged people that are dying the most. And then you get the younger folks just below that, and that's in the US. And the reason we think that is this really made the people at NIDA, which is your National Institute of Drug Abuse, concerned that this is a medical problem because what's happening during this time of life, people are getting more and more aches and pains. They're getting more and more diagnoses. Some of them are becoming larger and obese, and they're having sleep apnea issues. They're being treated for all these different things. There's drug-drug interactions, and all of these things can combine to create respiratory suppression. And then there is drug abuse as well. So and then of course there's so many specialists. You know, there's so many people prescribing various things that it can interact. All right, so that's the concern. And this is the slide from Massachusetts. The folks in the 45 to 54-year-old range are that blue line here, that kind of aqua line that actually has come down a little bit. But so we see young people are dying at equal rates. And these are the young people here, the pink and the darker kind of, I guess you'd call that burgundy. All right, so it's the 25 to 54-year-old age are dying. How did we get into this mess? Well, one of the theories, and I think this is a strong theory, is that the World Health Organization back in 1986 appropriately promoted opioids for cancer pain, okay? And they started using opioids for mild to moderate pain, mainly for cancer at that time, but then they decided, gosh, they're working so well for cancer pain, I bet it will work well for musculoskeletal pain. And so they started promoting it for mild to moderate pain, for musculoskeletal pain, and saying it's safe and you can increase it. And if you have pain, you're not going to become addicted. It's not going to be a problem because it's a legitimate medical problem, and you don't expect to be addicted to it. So these were myths that were promoted by pharmaceutical companies and so on. The VA launched its initiative to treat pain in 1999, which was fairly aggressive, and so did JCAHO, which is a hospital accrediting organization. They followed suit. And so if you went into the hospital, you would be asked, so what is your pain level? Is it 0 to 10? And if it was in the, if you had pain, you would be treated for it. So the hospitals would be given good points and accreditation based on a fairly aggressive treatment of pain, thinking this was definitely in patients' best interests. And so it all seemed good, right? We're treating pain, we're trying to help people. But the American Pain Society came out with its guidelines in 1996, right as OxyContin hit the market, and it was aggressively marketed as a safe alternative. In fact, I remember when it first came on the market, and I was working in Cincinnati, and the woman came to promote it. I'd never heard of it before, and she gave me this mug. All right? And I thought I had it with me. I was just looking for it in my bag, but it must be in my bag in the car. So it's a little chipped. I've been using it for a while now. But it says OxyContin may be habit-forming. It just says warning. But she didn't say that. She just said this is much less likely to be a habit because it's long-acting, slow in onset, so it's going to solve our problems with our patients with pain. And in the back side, it says the one to start with and the one to stay with. Can you believe it? So I think this is going to be worth something down the road, so I'm going to try to preserve this mug. So anyway, but it's mixtures of opioids, and it's different kinds of opioids, sedatives, and alcohol that kill people. And this is a study from Ontario where they tracked 600,000 opioid prescriptions that were paid for by the public drug plan. So you get into a single payer system, you can actually track these things. But so there were nearly 1,500 opioid-related deaths, and that's actually like 2.4 per thousand of these prescriptions, which seems like a lot to me if you think about it. And so the toxicology screening on these deaths, there was more than one opioid type in 40%. There were benzos, which are those sedatives and tranquilizers of various forms, like Valium and Klonopin and et cetera. So that 60% of them had something like that, and alcohol in 20%. So it's mixtures of these things that people are doing. And so we do see this slide too, that where deaths follow along with the amount of sales. So this shows the opioid sales over time, just how much that increased over this past decade. Can you believe it? I mean, a decade ago, we weren't getting a tenth of, hardly a fifth of what we have now in terms of the number of opioids that are prescribed. That's how hard these have been marketed and how much doctors felt comfortable prescribing them, et cetera. So it's something we really have to rein in. It's a whole mindset that needs to change. It's an expectation of maybe we don't need to have every ache and pain treated fully. Maybe it's a matter of time before our pain's just going to subside. So personal expectations, et cetera. So the death curves, the treatment curves, the sales all follow along. It's not necessarily cause-effect, but it is suggestive. And then deaths are just the tip of the iceberg. And so for every one opioid overdose in 2010, there were 15 abuse treatment admissions, 26 emergency room visits, 115 people who abuse or are dependent. And I think this is a real gray area as far as, who's really dependent and actually, when is it dependency versus some sort of addiction, and when is it diminishing returns? It's not black or white. We have to be skeptical of if we're relying on a medication like this, it's getting more and more potent and it's not working, whether it's really helpful. But anyway, that's another story. But the non-medical users, 733. Out of, for every one death. And if you translate that, we were looking at the numbers in Norfolk County, for instance, we had recorded about 61 deaths, and there were probably more. That's probably an underestimate. It doesn't necessarily include people who died in the hospital. But we figured it actually translates into about 44,000 non-medical users in Norfolk County alone. All right, so you could do the math here as well in Plymouth County if you want. So I'm curious, so which is worse? Undertreated pain is worse than addiction? I think most of us would probably err on the side of the next one. Addiction is worse than undertreated pain. This is the dilemma that doctors are trying to deal with when they have a patient in front of them who's asking for relief of their pain. And it's such a subjective thing. Sometimes we have evidence of what's causing pain. Many times we don't. But it's not really so simple. First of all, does it work? So I looked online and this was a blog of physicians kind of having a conversation of, where do they fall in the spectrum? But the problem is the treatments for pain also don't work that well. So whether you call it undertreated pain or just, sometimes these opioid treatments stop working after a while, it's really not that simple. And the head of the CDC, Tom Frieden, has clearly stated that the evidence of opioids for use for chronic pain is only based on like 12-week studies. Okay? Anything beyond 12 weeks, it's not known, hasn't been well studied. So we really don't have the evidence. And in fact, when you do look at long-term studies, it shows very little evidence of improved function. And usually people are functioning more poorly. They're more disabled. They are more depressed. They have more side effects, et cetera. And these are a couple of the theories as to why the opioids have not worked. The opioids being any of these drugs, hydrocodones, the OxyContins, the oxycodones, and Dilaudid, et cetera. Hyperalgesia, that just means that the nervous system changes. It's like the nervous system is on overdrive. And after you're on it for a number of weeks, probably 6 weeks or more, some people, or I think more people than we think, develop this as a side effect where this sensation and the peripheral nervous system becomes more sensitized to pain. So for the person who's dependent on an opioid medication, if you hit their thumb with a hammer, it's going to hurt a lot more than someone who's not on it, okay? And the tolerance also develops. It's a state of adaptation in which the drug induces changes in the nervous system such that you get a less good result over time. Okay, so the pain kind of emerges right through the dose that you're on. So doctors keep upping the medication. Is this dose working for you? No. Go ahead and, okay, I guess we'll have to go up on it a little bit. But then you get more side effects, and then you probably have more hyperalgesia as well. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And these are some of the adverse effects of opioids, all right? Constipation being one of the worst. It actually is pretty serious and pretty universal, and sometimes can lead to bowel obstructions and need for surgery. So it's not a thing to take lightly. The other ones here, it can affect the immune system. People have more infections as a result. It can affect sexual function. I tell the men, if I don't want to prescribe it, that their testicles will shrink. Okay, so hypogonadism, they're usually not happy to hear about that. And then osteoporosis is also a side effect. So there's more bone fractures in people with chronic opioids, besides the fact that it just can wreak havoc on the mood. Depression and anxiety is all over the place. So Monitoring for the Future, Monitoring the Future is a study conducted by University of Michigan, and it's interviewing 400 schools and 46,000 students in high school, all right? And it looks at all sorts of drugs and their exposure to these drugs and their use of these drugs, and this is just a couple little snippets, but you can look this up. It's all available online. And the OxyContin use among 12th graders, look at this, 5% of our 12th graders are using OxyContin non-medically. All right, that's what's being reported. And the good news is that it seems as though there might be some evidence that some of our efforts are panning out, perhaps some of the drug mills being closed, et cetera, and maybe doctors using prescription monitoring programs more, pharmacists resorting to that, and treatments, et cetera. So some of this is dropping down. The Vicodin use actually is statistically significantly lower now, down to about 5 to 6%. compared to before where it was closer to 10% in the 12th graders. That's what's being reported at least. And then, but look at this, the availability of narcotics. They report that 50% report that these are very easy or fairly easy to obtain. Okay, all they have to do is go into the medicine cabinet, right? Is Kim Noble here by any chance? So she shared these slides with me. She heads up some of the South Shore Hospital programs that is called the Youth Health Connection, and it's a community benefit dedicated to positive mental and physical well-being of our youth and their families. And they collaborate with the schools and with the health officials, law enforcement, state agencies to sponsor a variety of educational events. And so I just want you to know about that. And one of them is called Families, Adolescents, and Communities Together Against Substances or FACTS. And Lynn, you might know about this, but the Hidden in Plain Sight, isn't that a mobile, like, do you know about that? Is that okay, good. So they walk parents through a mock bedroom.
Like a bedroom of a teenager's room,
right.
And they, you have to look for things that are hidden in plain sight. So
excellent.
Places where drugs can be hidden.
So it's like a mobile kid's room. Okay, isn't that great? I love that idea. I thought that was really clever.
And they do a train the trainer program, and it's a really good program for potentially a DARE officer to do in the middle school program.
Excellent. Okay, so these are some of the things they do. They're involved with the prom and graduation safety booklet distribution and awareness about that. Collaboration with the different counties here, treatment centers, SAD, and local town coalitions. So just be aware of that. So that's her contact information. And I'm sure you can find that online too, through South Shore Hospital. You could search for Kim Noble. And I can give that to you if you need it later. But in the doctor's office, if you happen to be on medications or need medications, I'm sorry, am I going over? We doing all right? Okay. So expect that if a doctor is being conscientious, that there will be a narcotic contract, that there might be pill counts, there might be urine testing, and there might be information that they gather from the prescription monitoring program. And this is to keep everyone safe. So whether you are perfectly upfront and appropriate with your narcotic use or not, it just is keeping everyone safe, hopefully. Safety at home, these medicines need to be locked up. There should be pill counts. Parents must administer to children or adolescents and use ice packs because these things are great for pain, all right? And pay close attention to any changes in behavior. I was so proud of my 18-year-old who had his wisdom teeth out and was given a prescription for 30 Percocet. And I guess he filled it, but he never took one. He used the ice pack and the ibuprofen. But why? So we're making some efforts too. I know Dave's been working with the dental schools and their dental groups to try to get them to cut back on just how much of this stuff is prescribed. And the orthopedic group at South Shore Hospital is also trying to come together and use smaller amounts for the post-operative pain. Some people were given 90 perks, some people were given 30. So they're at least trying to keep it a little bit closer to a minimum after a big orthopedic surgery. They can be reevaluated. So do not flush down the toilet. It's not so good for the fish, I understand, but if you could take it to the pharmacy or police station or grind it and mix with dirt or coffee grounds or cat litter or something like that. But I think the best thing would be to dispose of it at the police station locally. Wouldn't you say? Yeah, excellent. All right, so in summary, opioids are useful though. I mean, I didn't really cover this, but we know they're useful for short-term severe pain, and that's we want that. I mean, we want to be treated for our severe pain if it happens, but they should not be used routinely for chronic long-term non-cancer pain, okay? And marketing efforts from the 1990s and beyond stating that these were safe has proven to be wrong. All right, the increased supply and abuse of opioids is the most serious public health crisis we face. it kind of bothers me. I haven't heard much from President Obama about this. In the period of time where 3,000 West Africans died of Ebola, that same period of time, 30,000 Americans died of drug overdose. All right? So we must all become educated regarding the very serious risks we face for ourselves and our families, and safe storage and disposal. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and let's keep working on this, and you know, feel free to educate your doctors too. A lot of them are a little slow to change. So you know, if you feel like you're seeing them for a medical problem, it's okay to question. You know, like, yeah, I'd like something for my pain, but it doesn't have to be an opioid, or if it is, you know, I think I only need about 6, right? Or something like that. So it's okay to question and to get into a dialogue and have a back and forth about these things, so so that we can all be safe and learn from each other. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. That was very good, and thank you for all the information. A couple of quick things. I did see a colleague of mine, Carol Falvey's here from the school committee. Thank you, Carol. Also, the principal from the high school, Paul Gerard McCann, is here. Thank you again. And if just before I call our next speaker, some folks I had talked to had heard about this, asked me, it's called Guiding Good Choices. This January, the Hingham Middle School will be sponsoring the Guiding Good Choices program for the parents and caregivers of middle school-age children. Guiding Good Choices is a proven effective research-based prevention program which gives parents tools to talk to their kids about drug and alcohol use, strengthen family bonds, and manage family conflict. Please stop by the table in the lobby for more information. I know Linda Cope's there. I know that Thad is out there. And thank you for being interested in helping us. The next speakers are a father and daughter, and they want to share their personal story with us. If I could get Jack and Rebecca Riley to come up.
Thank you. Thank everybody for having this and for inviting us. My name is Jack Riley. I am most commonly known as Becca's dad, wherever I seem to go. I am the child of alcoholic and drug addicted individuals who suffered from the disease. I am a brother of someone who suffered from the disease that led to his death, and I am the father of 2 beautiful children, one who suffers from the disease of addiction and one who does not. So I've seen it from every angle, from all the different parts of addiction for my entire life. And I can tell you that people who suffer from this disease, we need to start referring to them as people who suffer from a disease as opposed to addicts. These are not bad people. These are not bad kids. These are good kids. And there's a story, a book called Heroine's Puppet, written by somebody who often comes to Learn to Cope meetings. And in that, she lost her child, and her child was pre-med at the time, getting A+ in microbiology courses, doing very well, and seemed to be okay, and was in recovery and struggling a little bit, but seemed to be highly functioning. So this is not an illness or a disease in which people live under a bridge. This is not a disease of bad people who just don't get it. This is a disease that is overwhelming to the human spirit. This is a disease that takes away everything that you have and wants more. So that what you end up doing is you're dealing with the disease in front of your loved one. And the disease wants to do nothing but sit in the couch, get fed, do drugs, and feed the drugs. And so what happens is we get caught in this whirlwind with the person suffering from the disease. We have all the ups and downs. We have the manipulation. We have the theft. We have all of these things, and we start to get wrapped up in it. And we say, why don't they get it? They've lost their job. Why don't they get it? And when you hear people in recovery, they'll tell you, the job was the worst thing I wanted at the time. It got in the way of my doing drugs. It got in the way of my addiction because all I thought about was feeding the addiction. And too often we pass these people by as just not trying hard enough. And it's not that at all. And the FDA has agreed to put out more drugs that are more highly addictive. And it's very, very difficult. But Learn to Cope, we came to after we were met with a crisis. And we had a crisis in which we realized that our daughter, Becca, had a problem. And so we asked her to take a drug test, and she refused. And we knew that what that meant. And so we gave Becca an option. She could go to detox, or she could leave. Hard choice. Hardest decision I've ever made in my entire life. Because I love my Becca to pieces. And parents make those decisions every day. And so when we talk about the criminal system, and we talk about beds, and we talk about all of the things that we need, because it's a very complicated issue, I can tell you from a parent, it is the hardest thing you can go through. It rips your heart out. But see, I had an advantage. My advantage was that my brother had passed away from drug abuse many years before. And I ended up having to make the decision of whether or not to continue his life support. Why was that an advantage? Because I saw what enabling him did. I saw my parents enable his addiction to the point where he could not function and ended up homeless in the woods. And so I knew enough to know that my daughter's opportunity for recovery was jail, death, or recovery. Those are my options. And so I loved her enough that I was willing to do that with my wife, and she loved us enough to choose detox. And now she has 2 years of recovery. Now, I will tell you that based upon my childhood, I did everything humanly possible to insulate myself from this potential disease. I felt like I could exercise some control. We moved to the Metro West area, the W's, Wellesley, Wayland, Weston, right? We made sure that she had the right kinds of friends, that in fact our friends were married for long times. They were nice people. We insulated our kids. I read stories about girl empowerment to them at bedtime. We never talked about weight. You know, we tried to do everything we could to control something. And so I'm here to let you know that you cannot control this disease. It is a disease. It strikes anywhere and any time. So when you move to a wonderful community like Hingham, and you go to the best schools, and you do everything that you can, you are not insulated from this problem. This problem is taking the lives of wonderful young kids and destroying them and leading to overdoses. I was at a rally in Washington recently, and someone came up with the statistic, and I haven't verified it, but he came up with the statistic that we lose 2 jumbo jets full of young people every day from overdoses. Now imagine that. Imagine if 2 jets a week fell out of the sky, how much money we would throw at that problem to stop that problem. And yet we don't have enough money. We don't have enough beds. We don't have enough education or resources, but we are making an effort. And everybody here tonight that's here and trying to educate us and try to talk to us about it are making an effort. But we need to do more. And we need to do more because every child lost is lost forever. And there are kids out there in your neighborhoods who are suffering from this. And there are families suffering from it. A recent study came out and asked 18 different countries, I believe, of the worst stigmas that they could imagine. A list of 15, I think they were. Homeless, criminal, drug addict, et cetera, et cetera. 15 terrible situations. Being a drug addict was the most stigmatized situation you could have. Recognized in 18 countries as the #1 most shameful, stigmatized illness or condition that you could have. And so we don't talk about it. And when we keep it in the shadows, it stays in the shadows. But you know people who are affected by this. They just don't talk about it. And so the more education we can do, the more outreach we can do, the more beds we can get, the more effort we help people on their journey to recovery, the better our community will be as a whole. And I'll give you just a quick story. I was in Oklahoma, in a place so far away from anything that it was ridiculous. Okay? It was an hour and a half from Oklahoma City and an hour and a half from Dallas, and there was nothing there. And I was talking to 6 factory workers at a rubber plant. And one of those people had lost their child, and he lost his child through a car accident. He was feeling a lot of remorse about the fact he had let her drive. And I said, it wasn't your fault. And I started to say, things happen, and as a parent, you do the best you can. And I talked about Becca's story with him. 4 of those 6 people all said, we have a relative who is a heroin addict in the middle of Oklahoma with nothing around. 4 out of 6. It is so prevalent, but we don't ask. And it is so prevalent, people don't talk and share their stories because it's tough. And that's what Learn to Cope gave me. I went to Learn to Cope, I felt I was alone in the world. I felt my story was the worst story in the history of mankind. How could this have happened to me? And Learn to Cope gave me hope. Learn to Cope is just a peer group. We sit around, we have 13 different meetings. We're open to anybody who's a loved one of somebody suffering from opioid addiction. And we talk, and we give support, and we educate, and we try to share information, and we try to advocate. And we hear stories of people in recovery who have been in recovery and gone through the trials and tribulations, and we learn so much from them. Because it is not easy, and it is a tough journey. But what we hear from them is, you know, the best thing that ever happened to me was my mother threw me out. Well, the best thing that ever happened to me was my mother said, hey, figure it out. I'm not going to be involved. I'm not sleeping with my pocketbook under my pillow anymore. And they said that started me on the road to recovery. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to help parents understand and bond together to say the first step in recovery is to identify the issue and then start the journey. And there are relapses. It's part of recovery. But the relapses get smaller. The recovery gets longer. There is hope. And there is hope because we are a peer group in which we try to get together and we share information and we share stories, and we know we're not alone anymore. So we have 13 chapters. We have Norwell, which is twice a month, closest one here, and then we have Quincy every Tuesday. I'm on the board of directors of Learn to Cope. I am a certified facilitator. I am trained by the DPH to do Narcan training. Becca and I have spoken in a bunch of different places, and we thank you for your time and listening to our stories. Beck?
Thank you, Jack.
Hi, I'm Becca. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. So it's really good to be here tonight. I think that a lot of things that we've talked about are really important. I just have no idea what to say right now, because once I got up here, I lost all train of thought. But you know, as for me, I grew up in like a really nice town. I never wanted for anything. I had a perfectly good childhood. You know, I sat through the DARE classes. I was that girl who was like, I'm never going to use and I'm never going to drink. And that all changed for me one day, and it happened really fast. You know, I never got a prescription for opiates, but I got opiates through other kids that had prescriptions. You know, it's like I never had to drive more than 20 minutes, basically. And it was a town kind of like Hingham. And that's the sad part is, you know, it's so stigmatized as to like the bad parts of town and the bad parts of the city, and really like you can get it anywhere. And you know, I got it from kids who either knew someone that was prescribed it, or you know, their mom was and they were stealing the prescriptions from their mom. You know, and it wasn't that hard to find for the beginning, and then it became harder, and heroin became cheaper, and heroin became easier. And you know, really quickly from the day that I first started with a gateway drug, the day that I first started smoking weed, probably maybe like a year and a half later, I was doing heroin every day. And I never thought that would be me. You know, I didn't understand really what was happening inside me because I was a good person, and good people don't steal from their families, and good people don't steal from stores, and good people don't lie to people. You know, if you had asked, I just turned 21 years old, and I just celebrated 2 years of sobriety on October 1st. And if you had asked me when I was 18 years old where I thought I would be on my 21st birthday, I wouldn't have told you, like, sitting on the, not that it wasn't fun, but sitting on the beach with my parents because I can't drink and I can't do drugs. You know, I thought that at this point in my life I would have graduated college, or I would just be graduating, I would have a career set up. And you know, I'm 21 years old and I just got my, like, I live in Quincy and I work at a bakery. And not that I'm not happy, but like that's how far like heroin veered me off my life path, you know. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is, oh, it could never happen to my kid. It could never happen to me. Like, I have everything that I want. And, you know, I started out with like a lot of other kids, almost every other kid that I know actually, which was smoking pot and drinking on the weekends. And, you know what I mean? Like, if you had asked me when I was 17 years old drinking on the weekends, I would, like, I didn't take a sip of beer and expect to be snorting heroin in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't, like, the grand plan, the grand scheme of things. And, but it happened. And it's really scary because it happened so fast. And it's really scary because it wasn't hard, you know? And I just maybe, what, like 4 or 5 months ago, I was actually at the dentist getting a tooth pulled. And I had gone in there and I had told him, look, like, I'm a heroin addict, like, I don't want any medicine for this, I'll be fine. And I had to fight with this dentist to not get a prescription. And, you know, I kept just repeating myself, like, I don't want this, I can't handle it. And he was like, no, you might be in pain. Just take it home with you, and you don't have to, like, you don't have to go to the pharmacy with it if you don't need it. But if I had taken that prescription home, I would have probably gone to the pharmacy anyway, and I was fine. I took, like, I don't even think I took Advil, but I think that's like a really common problem too, is that it's really easy to get, sorry, I'm nervous, so I'm stuttering, but you know what I mean? Like, you can go to a dentist and they'll hand you a prescription, and that's not how it should be. I think with all of the overdose rates, it's really important to, like, educate yourself, because if I hadn't, like, been in the good spot where I was, I could have gone to that dentist's office, taken the prescription, and thrown 2 years down the drain, you know, for over a pulled tooth. So I really don't know what else to say, so thank you.
Thank you, Becca. That's courageous of you to share your story with us, and your dad as well. And I have to say, I've heard similar stories, and I know that has an impact on a lot of people. The folks that aren't necessarily here tonight that can watch it on TV, and the parents of those children can understand that we have to work really hard together to make sure that we fight the epidemic, because it's a terrible epidemic. But congratulations to you. We're very proud of you. So at this point in time, there's obviously other speakers available, but I do want to open it up to some questions to the panel. If you do, I just want to make one other thought, and I think we probably all share this thought, is that this is the beginning of a process. This is the beginning of a group effort in this town and in the South Shore and obviously across the state. We're going to create a task force. We are going to work with the other communities in the South Shore, and I think we share one goal, that if we can save one child, if we can save one family from the heartache and the devastation of drug addiction and the consequences that come, we've accomplished something. So I want to thank everybody for taking part in the start of our journey, and I appreciate you all coming out. We're going to open up the questions. We have a microphone. If anybody wants to ask questions. You want to step up to the microphone? And if you want to, you can direct it generally, or you can ask someone in particular. It's up to you.
All the other coalitions around the area?
Yes.
We're actually from the Holbrook Coalition that we just started too. So we were trying to find out how are you going to go about doing, reaching out to the other.
Well, I'm gonna have someone answer that. Jose Morales from the Public Health, you want to come up here? You were going to speak about coalitions, and it's perfect timing, actually, for you.
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, is how you can collaborate with other coalitions in the area. We actually have a lot of information about that. We currently are funding coalitions all over the state, and what we seek from them actually is exactly what you're talking about here, which is doing this work in collaboration with the right partners, with the police, hospitals, schools, and all of the people involved, people in recovery. So we funded a couple of years ago, actually, 13 coalitions all over the state, and they're working with neighboring towns to do this work. And we have a lot of learnings based on that. We have a lot of guidance that we've provided to them. Be happy to share that with you. And then I told you how we went about doing that. And we have a technical assistance provider that has lots of information on their website. Be happy to share that with you as well. City of Quincy is probably one of the closest ones that has done a lot of work around this, working with other coalitions within the area. Also, the City of Brockton has done the same. We are going to also increase our coverage to more towns in the southeast and on the Cape. So be happy to give you my card and give you more direction about what we do.
You have a question? Oh, sure, go right ahead. Can we give you the microphone?
The mic? Yeah.
Jose?
Jose, give Lynn the mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the woman from Holbrook. My name is Lynn Frano, and I work in Weymouth. The Norfolk County District Attorney is working with a group to help build coalitions throughout Norfolk County. And if you would like to speak with Dave, myself, anyone, we would give you some of the information on when we meet, how often we meet, and we meet often. We've been mentoring other coalitions, new coalitions in the Norfolk County catchment area, and through the Community Health Network Alliance and through the District Attorney's Office. So please see us about that. Thank you.
And I'm sorry if people didn't hear that. Is that on? Okay. And I'm sorry, so if you could speak right into the mic.
Sure, I'll speak right into the mic.
Go ahead and use the mic.
Use the mic? All right. And we will share, as will Weymouth, anything that anybody needs to start their own task force. Everybody's very generous because we don't want to be overlapping. So we don't want you spending money on something that we've already done if we can help you do it. And the same with Cohasset, Hingham, whatever. Whatever city or town needs something that we have, absolutely just ask for it, because at the beginning we were all overlapping and we don't do that anymore. Yeah, we all share. Everybody shares. It's a coalition that shares everything. My name's Kathy Deedy, and as I said, I'm from the city of Quincy. I'm on the Substance Abuse Task Force there. I was also a charter member at Learn to Cope when there were only 7 of us. And I'm the parent of an addict in recovery. And my girlfriend, who was also instrumental in starting Learn to Cope also, she lost her son to the disease of heroin addiction. And we also started the Narcan in the state. And we have saved 300 lives in the city of Quincy up until last week. It's a lot of lives. Anybody that has a loved one or knows somebody should get trained in Narcan. You need to be trained in Narcan. It saves lives. And what I wanted to say too, and I'm saying this to Rebecca because I also said it to my own son, is nobody says when they're a kid, I want to grow up and be an addict. That's not what we want. It's not what we want for our children. It's not what they want. It's something that happens. They don't think it's ever going to happen, but it happens. And not only does it ruin their lives, it ruins the lives of the families and everybody else who loves them. And there's only one word for it, and it's SUCKS, is the whole thing. I'm sorry to say that that's all there is to it. And what I want to say is there's great treatment out there. There's all kinds of resources, but the most important one I found, and I've been doing this for a long time now, is the involved, educated parent. It's my theme song. It has to start as early as 2 years old. When a kid gets an earache and goes to the doctors and gets a prescription that's in his name, you start to talk to your child then. They understand that this prescription is for them from their doctor, and as a parent, you question the doctor too about what they're giving your child. And you talk to them and you say, this is for you because you have an earache. It is poison to everybody else. And the only one that can give this to you is your mother, your father, or your doctor. It's a no-brainer if you start then, because all through the years they will know if you keep drumming it into their heads. Not that they're not going to try the joint or have a beer or do risky behaviors, but it's one of the things that we have to do in order to educate our children. You have to be involved and educated yourself, and it has to start way before kindergarten. And one of my questions to the commissioner is, I work with a lot of people in treatment. I also work at mentor at the jail and a few other places. There's a lot of people that are in sobriety that are not in recovery, that have mental health issues that are not addressed. So when they, as you said, come out of rehab, they start to use because they still have these mental health issues that are not addressed, and rightly so. I mean, we can't afford to address them when they're in, we don't have the money. And the insurance companies just fight you tooth and nail. I just find that 80% of the ones that I deal with have some kind of a mental health issue, and I'm just wondering, if you could comment on that. And thanks for all your hard work, because if it wasn't for all you, my son would probably be dead.
Well, thank you, Dee Dee, for the information that you just shared. One thing that I'll say before I respond to your question is that at the Bureau, one of the things that we are working really hard to promote is really to try to remove the barriers by addressing the stigma that is put upon this disease. And we're really working with individuals in recovery to identify themselves as individuals in recovery instead of an addict, because that word itself has a stigma that comes with it. And so we're really looking at this and saying, when you are in recovery, you celebrate it, you let people know, and you tell people that you are an individual in recovery. That is empowering. That sends a clear message in that we really want to be able to allow other people to join us in that as well. Becca, I commend you for coming up here and sharing your story, because I think it's by doing that, by really standing up, by really talking about what the disease has done to you and your family and personally, that it's not just your family, that it can happen to anybody, that it transcends communities. And that's how we're really going to get to really challenging this and really get the voice that we need to put on this disease as it is a disease, and not shameful, that people can be ashamed about having this disease. And so I commend you again for coming up, as well as your dad, to share your story and how you've overcome this and really celebrating your recovery. So thank you again. So to answer the question in regards to individuals with mental illness, that is something certainly within the Bureau that we are working actively to address. And you're right, addiction is a brain disease, and what we're seeing is that when people are presenting themselves for treatment, that there are co-occurring disorders that are happening there as well. And the work that we're doing really is to address this in a more holistic way, to begin to provide training and to begin to really strengthen the system that we currently have so that providers are able to address this. And this is more and more in terms of recent trends that we have seen, that our provider system increasingly are looking for the assistance and the support to be able to do that. And so that is something that we're actively working on to make sure that the staffing is appropriate to address the mental health as well as the substance abuse piece. And so for us, this is really something that we are prioritizing as a Bureau, and I'm glad that you brought it up, because it is part of our expansion process. It is part of our resource process that we're really making sure that the providers are able to address this issue at various levels, including looking at this from a holistic point, addressing the mental health as well as the substance use issue, which is also a mental health and behavioral health approach to addressing this disease. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add one thing to that. One second, I'll get you. I had spoken with Representative Garrett Bradley. There was a forum on Monday night regarding mental health issues, and he had invited people down. He's told me that he's working on that with also public health commissioners, also with drug prevention legislation. So I just wanted to acknowledge his efforts in that regard. I'm sorry, sir?
I can tell you that we're not getting the calls. A lot of times we will find, mainly with medical aid calls, that's how we find when we have people involved with drugs. We're not getting any arrests from our teens in our schools, but I'm not naive enough to say that it's not happening, you know, but we're not seeing the evidence of it within our teens. I think what we're seeing is just what the doctor said, our overdose deaths are people in their 30s to 50s. And I think the fire captain, you could probably address an incident last week.
We do have medical problems.
Could you just identify yourself so they know?
Oh, I'm sorry, Captain Murphy from the Hingham Fire Department. We do have medical problems in the town that do revolve around or involve around opiate abuse. We've noticed recently a slight increase, not as significant as some other communities have had, but we would be lying to ourselves if we said it does not happen here. It has done it. We've also seen that these are not only Hingham residents, but they're also people that are commuting through the community, so it's occurring in public places or anything else. So it is happening. We are addressing it. Both the police and the fire departments are working. Currently, the fire departments carry Narcan on the ambulance, which is naloxone or Narcan. We carry those on the ambulances, and we're in the process of carrying that on both the police vehicles and all of the fire engines and everything else. So we're addressing it, but it does exist. So
can I?
I'd like to, if you don't mind. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Rob Ramsey. I'm the town's DARE officer. I've been doing the DARE for the past 10 years. Been a police officer for almost 20. The problems that our kids are having in town are the generic, pretty much everywhere else. It's the weed, the booze, and the prescription pills. Prescription pills, because most of them are already on some prescription pill anyway, for whatever they might have going on. But the biggest problem is the weed and the booze, which scares me more. I don't, like District Attorney Cruz said earlier, the marijuana has become out of control. The state is giving these kids the wrong message by lowering the fact of that less than an ounce is now decriminalized. So the kids think, well, I'd rather take my chance to get a $100 fine than getting locked up for beer. And the weed today is much more powerful, much more stronger than what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's really, really bad stuff, and I think we're going down a very, very slippery slope.
So what I would add to that question is, from the Bureau's standpoint, just in preparation for this meeting, we had a chance to look at the data for Hingham. And what I can tell you is that what we saw in terms of number of individuals served with addresses from Hingham from 2013, FY 2013 to 15 currently, we saw that there was 253 individuals with Hingham addresses that receive services within the system. What's interesting out of that is that of that population, 53% was between the ages of 18 to 29. And 58%, again, identified opioids as their primary drug of choice, being heroin. And so for us within the Bureau, that's the information that we continue to keep by address, by location and by community, to give us a sense in terms of what's happening within the various communities. And so, again, it may not be an issue that is spoken about openly in the community, which is why these meetings are important, because then it removes the stigma that's attached to it so that you can learn more about what the impact of the issue is. But we do see an uptick in terms of the use of the system from various communities, and sometimes when we attend meetings, this is what we heard. This is not uncommon, that we're probably not seeing this in our community, that it may not be happening, but when you really look at the data, it is actually showing that there is a problem in the area, and we commend you for having this meeting.
We just have someone, if we just...
Thank you. I hope I'm speaking into it this time. I'm just curious if Hingham has a youth survey. Do you do a survey?
Yes.
Because there may be some questions in that survey about prescription drugs and alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and that would be a good way to
Yes.
to look at
Paul, could you address
if
that?
kids are actually, in what grades they might be starting to use some of these prescription drugs.
I'm Paula Gerard McKenna. I'm the high school principal, and I can tell you we have given the Youth Risk Behavior Survey every other year to 9th and 11th graders. On alternate years, we give the asset survey, and we have the statistics, which I publicize every September at my open house, and they're always in our newsletter. They're on my website, on the high school website, if you want to check and see what the Hingham high schools were. The middle school, I'm sure, does the same thing, but we do that survey every year.
Well, I'm just saying that's where
Yeah,
this gentleman
exactly.
can probably
Right.
find that
Mhm.
information.
Right, and I remember the statistic. It was 34% of the students in grades 9 and 11 had used marijuana. 5% had used heroin, which I found shocking that there was even 5%. But I do know, I believe it was 34% for marijuana, and the same for alcohol. So I certainly agree with what Officer Ramsey said. Those are the two drugs we see the most.
Could you wait, there's a gentleman over here.
You'd like to?
Hey, Kirk, could you let this gentleman sit in it? Apologize, we'll get you next.
I strongly suspect that you're not seeing the opiate problem that exists here, because marijuana is very glaring. It's bulky, it takes time, you gotta smoke it, you smell it, it stays on your clothes, your eyes get bloodshot, and you can say, that kid's stoned. Right? Booze. Booze is bulky, you gotta carry it around, you gotta get somebody to buy it for you. It takes time to sit there and drink, and it's very visible when somebody's drunk, and that smells too. This is about how quick I could. I'm high as a kite, right? They just hypothetically ingested some heroin. You can't smell it on me, you can't see it on me, and in the early stages, you'd never know. You'd never know it. It's not till you later on, when you start the behavior of stealing stuff, of not showing up, of doing so much of it that it's visible on you, and you can see it in your pupils. You're seeing a lot of pot and alcohol because it's a very visible thing. You're not seeing the opiates at this stage, at the high school level. You can't see it. They can walk right in front of you. And it's pretty small, and it's hard to find. I'm pretty confident it's here.
Thank you.
I'll be very quick, but I just want to repeat actually what Paul just said. The people that you elect really do matter, and I know we're talking a lot about coalition building here, but the laws that we have on the books matter too. And this year we got one of the best new laws on the books in a long time for substance abuse. It was a substance abuse omnibus bill, and it was in large part thanks to your state representative leader, Garrett Bradley, who's in leadership up in Beacon Hill. And so I got a chance to work with him. One day he just called my phone up, said, this is a real problem, and I want to help fix this. And so not only did he help get that bill done, but he's wanting to work on this, continuing to work on this the next session. And as much as I know he's a great guy, and I know that he cares about this issue, it says a lot about you all telling him that this is an issue, starting from the leadership that's right here, all the way up to Beacon Hill. So I just want to say that the stuff that you do here is not just loud in this room, it's heard up there, and it allows people like Lydia and myself to actually have an active audience to get the right things done that really do have an effect. So I just want to say thanks to all of you, And I know the leader wanted to be here tonight and stuck, I think, on trying to get a flight back, but I just want to make sure that he gets recognized for really the hard work that's going to have a real impact for this room and this community. So just wanted to echo what Paul said.
Thank you, Jay. And I just want to, Kirk Schultz from our Board of Health, thank you for helping out today and being here as well. Paul?
I had the opportunity to speak to Garrett Bradley this morning when we were talking about this program tonight. And one of the things that he wanted to kind of speak to was this dashboard initiative. I'm not sure, perhaps you could speak to that. I run into that myself in terms of the Section 35 scenario, where a family member comes in, wants to section someone in their family. There's simply not enough beds available, and Bridgewater is the next stop, and a lot of people don't want to go to Bridgewater. It's frankly, the shortage of beds. I think I heard Mr. Riley speak to that, and I've heard it kind of permeating the conversation, but that really is a problem, and I don't think that that's truly appreciated or recognized by a lot of people.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. So just to answer your question, this was one of the key areas that we heard through the task force meetings that happened across the state, that not only was there an insufficient amount of beds, that people in community were also having a hard time understanding the system enough to know where to go, how to get there, and even what's appropriate for them. Oftentimes what we've seen is that when a family or an individual is in crisis, the first option that comes to mind is detox. And sometimes it may not necessarily be the first step that is needed. It may not necessarily be what is needed for that family. And so we heard that loud and clear. And what we heard was really to be able to develop a system that gives people the opportunity to learn about the system, to understand the system, and to be able to identify the services that is appropriate, that is needed, and then get the assistance and the help to really do more targeted referral, to target their search as well as access to the beds. And so with that, what we're working on at the Bureau is to develop a central navigation system that is going to provide just that opportunity, so that we will have individuals and staff working that are trained in addiction, that can actually be on the phones and actually work with a family, work with an individual who's facing a crisis, to identify the issue and then to be able to help them understand the system and then guide their search so that they can access the treatment that they need. In addition to that, in the FY15 budget, the legislature, and again, thanks, as Jay had mentioned, to all the work as well as the cry out from the community for this very issue, the legislature appropriated new funding for the Bureau to actually expand the system. And so over the past 18 months, we've been able to add 280 new beds in the system. And in the next 6 months, we're going to add another 128. And that's just the beginning. We have more that we're implementing over the course of the next year. And so I think that in the interim, what we're seeing really is an issue that we're working through. However, with the advocacy that we've seen, with the new systems that we're implementing, we're really going to be a systems change here, where people will be able to have not only access to information, but be able to target their search so that they can have access to the treatment that they need. And once they identify that need, have a bed or community support available. I speak about community support because I also think that sometimes the thought also comes to a bed may be what I need to get the help that I need, and that sometimes having community support, having community programs may be a stop that can prevent you from having to actually ultimately needing a bed. And so we're strengthening our community programs so that people can have access while they're in community, while they're still with their family, to address the issues early on, so that the need for a bed may not necessarily be the necessity. community. So I thank you for that question, because right now, as we speak within the Bureau, we're working actively to implement a series of initiatives so that we can address just that very fact. So over the next year and a half or so, I think that various communities will see the results of that. Thank you. That one was yours, right?
Thank you. That's very encouraging, and it's a good question, Paul. I know that is a problem that people see all the time, and being in the courts, I dealt with an issue within the last week north of here where there wasn't a bed available, and it's difficult. Sorry.
Can I ask you a question? Now, when you're saying there's more beds, is that more beds for Section 35s, or is that just more beds in general for people who can go in voluntarily?
So I think the way that we're addressing this is that a lot of times families in crisis will seek the Section 35 as an option to be able to have treatment on demand when other options are not available. And one of the pieces that we looked at was how do we, so to answer your question directly, the new beds that we're adding include Section 35 beds as well. And so the idea is that as we expand the entire system at all levels, that we will be able to address needs for individuals. And so if it is a family that is in crisis that needs the Section 35 bed, that they will be able to have access to that. But if it's also a family that needs access within the public system, to the non-Section 35 system, that they would also be able to have access to that. And so the expansion is across the entire system that will allow us to really provide increased access for all individuals regardless of their need.
Well, I think the other issue is in Section 35, you can only do it, you have to have the person, you only can do it Monday through Friday. You only can you have to be picked up by 2. So then you've got families who their kids already know that if I hide till 2 o'clock, they can't get me on the weekends. Like, is there help for those individuals that need the help, like a Section 35, but it needs to be like expanded hours or something like that, because families can't, and then you've got a parent that has to work and they can't leave, they'll lose their job or their house or whatnot. Like, there's got to be some additional help, like a Section 35, that can help those parents who cannot get to the courthouse or who can't get their kid before 2 o'clock, or their kid's only going to be around on the weekend.
Well, I think what you're speaking to is really, again, being able to expand the system so that there are beds available within the community so that individuals can have access on those timeframes that you just mentioned. Because again, what we see is that a lot of times Section 35 is sought as an option for last resort, that the insurance company was not going to pay for me to go, so then I'd have to go to the court so that they can admit me. Or that I wasn't able to find a bed, and so that's the only way that I'm able to have access to that. Or that really you have someone who's really at risk to themselves and their family, that they actually need the courts to mandate their treatment. And so we see a broad spectrum of the needs, and so what we're trying to do is really to expand the system so that we're able to address those at various points, at whatever that family may be, whatever the circumstance that the family may be in. And so part of the expansion process really is in terms of adding the beds, but also working with the providers so that they're able to address the needs at various points in times when families are in crisis, that they're able to admit families, that they're able to provide the services that they need. And so that's sort of part of the overall expansion process that we're working on.
If I can talk a little bit about 35s. Section 35 is going to court because your loved one is a danger to themselves or others. And you have to get to court early in the day. You wait, you have your evidence presented so that you can make your case as to what it is. We advise from Learn to Cope parents on that process about taking pictures, about doing that. But a Section 35 is a procedure in which up to 90 days they can get treatment. And sometimes for a parent or a loved one, you know they're safe for up to 90 days. And so that's an important piece. But they have to be a risk to themselves or to others. And on the weekend, Learn to Cope, generally our advice is call the police department. Because ultimately what you're trying to do is save the person's life. Our advice is Section 35 is not just to get a bed. Section 35, if the court's going to grant it, they're going to grant it because there's a risk to that person or someone else.
Thank you.
a question? We'll get you a microphone.
Hi, my question's for Becca. Do you speak at high schools? Do you ever go in at the high school level and speak? Okay. I'm thinking that the impact of what you have to say is invaluable. I think that if a high school student heard about everything you've been through and your courage and strength, that could be a real helpful thing for our students, because from what I'm hearing in the community is the alcohol and marijuana is viewed as sort of innocent drugs, but your timeline too of the weekend use of it and the quick progression, I think, can be a really helpful message to get out. And I know DARE does a lot of that, and I think sometimes as the students go out into the world and even into college, they're thinking the impact is less and less.
Yeah, I just want to address the question that was posed earlier about the middle school and high school numbers. Generally speaking, those numbers are going to be very low and nationwide in every community. However, I mean, as it was just mentioned, the use of alcohol and marijuana is very it's very common. Actually, the rates are very high, as the principal just mentioned, and those are really the first drugs that generally speaking, kids try. They don't really go into opioids for the first time. Usually, they have tried other drugs. So prevention efforts actually are mostly focused at alcohol and marijuana, because we believe that if you actually prevent those, the use or slow down the use of those drugs, I mean, you really are preventing the use of prescription drugs and opioids. That's pretty much our approach. There really aren't any evidence-based programs that prevent the use of opioids. That's too late when it happens. I mean, you really need to be at the middle school and high school level. I just wanted to say that, I mean, to the gentleman that was asking about numbers. You're not going to see huge numbers in any of the middle schools for generally.
I have a comment too. I was just realizing that no one's really commented on the void that's created and what void we're trying to fill with drugs and alcohol. You might have a comment on that, Becca, I'm not sure, but I think one of the concerns is what is the root cause of kids that are choosing to do this? Are they not having a fulfilling life? Are they not busy enough after school? Are they not involved in sports anymore? Are they too distracted with computer? So I think, are we too distracted by consumerism and needing this and that and needing instant fixes and instant gratification? So again, just thinking about the spiritual aspects or the community aspects from a larger perspective, what is that void that is trying to be filled, and how do we address that? Does anyone have any comments about that?
I would say that we've heard tons of stories about people in recovery who are star athletes. We've heard tons of stories of people in recovery who were successful in school. I don't think it has to do with the social aspects of it. I would say that what we've heard from people in recovery is they felt a hole inside them. They felt like they were not the same as everybody else. Things were harder for them, and they started using drugs to fill that hole. And so some people in recovery have said, I only used oxys once. It just lasted 5 years. Right? Because what you do is you use it to fill that hole. And what you realize is that you no longer do it for the enjoyment of the high, you do it so that you don't get sick. And that's the real irony of this, is you're not doing it to enjoy it, you're doing it because you don't want to be so sick from it. But it's trying to use something to fill a void inside you. And that's where the shame comes from, and that's where the stigma comes from.
Kirk Schultz, I am on the Board of Health here in Hingham. A fascinating topic, about drug addiction. We could talk for weeks about that. And being a physician myself, every day I have patients coming into the office, and some people, their pain is 10 of 10. And then someone else, and you know that their condition is much more significant, they're managing with the ice pack. And so a lot of what we're talking about today is about addiction and habitual behaviors. We hear about alcohol, marijuana, habitual. If I could add nicotine to that, and then opioids. And opioids are things that people just don't get out in the street. Primarily, they're getting them from physicians. We're making the, well, not me, but we're making the prescription available to patients. And so, what's the take-home message today for all of us? Because what we're talking about today is opioids for kids. When you hurt yourself, it causes pain. There's a reason. It wants you to limit that activity that you're doing to rest and recover. The ice pack, the over-the-counter NSAIDs, your Advil, your naproxen, they're not addictive. But opioids, your Vicodin, your OxyContin, they are. So treat them with respect. If you need that, if you've got to a point where you require that level of medication, don't hoard them in your medicine cabinet for, oh, if I hurt myself down the road. You finish your prescription, and what you have left over, you bring to the police department. They'll dispose of that. It's when you have these things in your house, in your medicine cabinet, your kids are going to find them. So we as parents, our take-home message today is to respect these highly addictive drugs. They all come from opium. They're refined, they're distilled, but they are opium drugs, the most addictive there is. Treat them with respect. Do not have them laying around. And, deal with your pain. It only hurts. You're not going to die for the most part. Ice pack, over-the-counters. That's where you need to go. And so if you are using OxyContin on a regular basis for more than the 3 months, for more than acute care, there's something there. There's something about you that's a little bit different. And again, I see patients every day coming in, and they vary incredibly on those that need certain type of drugs and those that get by. So it's not the condition. It's not condition-driven. It's patient-driven. And we're all different. So protect your kids. Watch out for the medications that you have and you have control over. And I guarantee you, half the people, maybe not half, a quarter of the people in this room, you have in your medicine cabinet, you've been saving some of those miracle drugs that work really well when you sprained your knee a couple of months ago. And you're just waiting, oh, geez, if this happens again, I'm prepared. So get rid of them. Bring them to the police department. Thank you. Hey, look at that.
My daughter's in long-term recovery from heroin addiction, and she said that she had no reason to use drugs. In the early 2000s, when OxyContin got into the schools, hit the streets, nobody knew what it was. The kids got it, kids shared it in school. Peer pressure is a tough thing, and she said she had no reason to use drugs. It was stupid, but peer pressure's tough, and they all did it.
Does anybody else have a question? Well, if I may, unless anybody else wants to say, I just want to thank everybody, and I think if anybody hasn't signed up outside and wants to get involved in a task force or wants information, please do it. People on TV, you can contact me or any of the selectmen at the selectman's office, and we'll add you to the list. I assume within the next few weeks to month we will be meeting at a task force that will be created, and I tend to think it may have already started, but I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But it's really, thank you everybody. It's a very important issue. I just think it's so important that we came together, the committee, the folks that are here tonight, and this is only the beginning. So if you could spread the word, as the gentleman said, we need more involvement. We need more people active in this effort because it's so important for our kids and our family and our neighborhood. Thank you.
I will. Oh, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I've been DA since '01, so, I mean, we were involved in a lot of that stuff.
How do you get that in?